Hello, my name is Skipper, and this is my second tutorial on Source SDK Advanced Tutorial. And today's lesson, I want to teach about the Skybox and the use of the Skybox. So, in here, I have a map as an example that I made a few days ago, and one thing I really did on this map is I added the Skybox up here to reduce down the optimization and the performance costs. So what exactly is the Skybox? Well, the Skybox is basically a additional information outside this map that draws the geometry anywhere down to 1/16 of the scale. So you can actually make your map look it's big and open when in reality it's not. So you have your map sealed and optimized where you can actually expand your environment outside in a different area. So right here, this is the Skybox, which is it's 1/16 of the scale of the original map right over there. And if you look up into the the Skybox texture, this is what you will be able to see it. So that's the today lesson tutorial I want to teach you guys for today. Okay, so I made a very simple map, which is not very complicated, but it will help us get started on the lesson. So I made some geometry that they're all defunct details. So today we want all these geometry into the Skybox. So what we need to do is we want to make sure that your area must be close to the center. So somewhere out here, I'm gonna create a box with no draw texture. It doesn't matter how big it is, but you want to make sure it's far away from your map because they will cause some problems if the Skybox is too close to your map. Oops. I forgot to change it to block. Let's see, where are you? Oh. And then I'm going to hollow this inside. Now, inside here, you can actually do two things. Is that you can actually make it use another Skybox texture, which actually rips in the Skybox that you use inside your map setting. So let me show you. Oh, first you have to select everything. This is the texture that will be drawn outside here and as well inside your map. That is if you don't have a Skybox. So I can leave this as no draw because you are not going to be able to see it. So I create entity and then we're going to need that as SkyCam. Now what this is a information that tells the game this is the start of drawing the Skybox. And what this camera does is that it's actually going to place another camera right here at the origin of this map right here, and it will draw out accordingly to where your map is offset to. So if your map is not at the origin, you have to calculate how far offset your map is in order to place your camera properly. And that's the main reason why you should always make your map right in the origin. So now I create a Skybox here. It does not have to be attached to the map, but it's somewhere off away from the map. So now what I wanted to do is I want to be able to calculate how big this is in terms of the 1/16 scale. So I have my calculator here and we're going to just do a simple division, and this is the scale. So to do this properly, you want to make sure you adjust your grid size to at least the max out. So my grid size is now 512. I am going to create a box, and this box will be the sketch texture. What this box will do is it's going to help me guide the units of this texture or the object. So that way when you scale it down, it will be able to align to the grid properly. So what you want to make sure is that you want to have your object inside that box. So right here, as you can see, it's sticking out, so I gotta make this a little bigger. When I create that, I am now going to hide that for now. So I'm gonna get the object that I wanted to put into the skybox and then simply cut them. So I can see I have some view geometry here, which I am going to cut right there. So that way the geometry actually meets the top of your sky, but it's not any further than it is. You might want to move them into world brush because you won't be able, if it's converted into a font detail, then these both will be selected no matter if you select one of them, so you have to be a world brush. But I'm still not done yet because I have this box in a regular shape, so I still have to cut those. So I'm gonna cut right there, and then the other side I'm gonna cut just right there. So now only the shape right here will be drawn to Skybox, and this is left behind. Oops, forgot about that. Next is you want to make sure you group the geometry. Oh wait, we still have one left. Let's cut this down. There we go. So that one's left out. Now, after you cut your geometry, we are going to group them to the skip texture that we created. So that way, when you move them, these guys will be moved to the skybox. So now we wanted to do two things now. We want to make sure that our texture is locked and our scale is locked as well, because when you move them, your texture might adjust based on the world position, and we don't want that because we want to make sure our textures are aligned to your original object down here. So now we got that taken care of. Let's move it to the skybox. So because I drew, oh wait, I made it bad, something bad, mistake here. Okay, so I need to fix that. I have to make sure that this guy has to be inside this box, and there's a reason for that. Now I'm going to group them again. There you go. Alright, now we can actually move this to the skybox. Now, there is a trick to do this, is that there is a tool, wooden hammer, that allows you to actually have the control of the transform. So we can actually rotate, we can scale, and we can move. But for today, we want to scale this down to the unit of the skybox, which is what I have the calculator here for. So we have to scale it down to a 0.0625. And we're going to do that for all the X, Y, and Z axes. Because if you only scale down one of them, it will scale only one direction. So once you put in the value, click on OK, and then there's your new object. It's so small. So now, because we have the grid accordingly adjusted to 512, we also have to calculate that as well. So what's 512 divided by 16? And that's 32. So we have to adjust our grid size to 32. And then, because we have this accordingly based on this, we can actually make it scale to based on wherever your map is. And that's how you do it. It is now placed correctly, I think. Let's check. Oh, no. It's still hovering. So, because we have the boundary box exactly at the origin, we want to make sure that is set to the origin. And that's how you do it. So now you have these pieces here in the skybox. Now there are a few options that you can do from here. You can actually ungroup them if you want to, but if you have to adjust the geometry here, then you have to do it accordingly again. This step is only required at the very last step where you're optimizing your map, and this is the step where you cannot add more details beyond the environments. Because if you have to adjust the environments like these objects here, it gets more complicated, and it's better to do this all over again. So I'm going to ungroup this because I finalized that, and then you can actually font details or font them into a brush if you want to. So now I have this geometry in the skybox. So now, one thing I usually do is I pick up the no draw and then texture these guys in there. So that way they can be drawn inside of the skybox though. So now we have this perfect skybox here. You can also put a draw box, put a no draw on the back where the player will not be able to see it based on where the border is. So if I'm right here inside the world, I should be able to see that. So I can't do that. But if I'm over here and you can't see on the back side like this, then that's perfectly appropriate. So now we can actually compile our map and then see in the end game. So I might do it down here because you're not going to be able to see it. Alright, so now we have our virtual blocks here, which is actually kind of messy looking. And then now we have the final blocks here, which I forgot to font detail them. So, oops. Get out of the way. There you go. Oops. Alright, so now we can actually run the map and then see our changes. Alright, so now we're in the game and it's going to be loading our map. So as you can see, this block can actually go up here, but it's more appropriate to do this. Oh, looks like it's offset.
Let's waste them.
So we gotta fix that. Seems like it's being offset by at least another 32 units. So let's go back here. This is of course why it's better to have the unit to help you to scale accordingly. So let me get my skip. Make sure you're all inside. So now it's properly placed accordingly to here. So let's run the map one more time. So now we have the geometry that's accordingly fixed to the skybox. So now we can actually use this. And then on this side, as you can see, that it only goes up to that certain units, but that is not the right limits. So that's how you do the skybox. As you can see, like from the very top here, this key right here should be actually be a lot taller than that. So let's go back to hammer and let's do the other things. Before I go back, I wanted to show you something else. If you enable the cheats, which should be already enabled. So let's turn on the wireframe mode. As you can see, if you compile the map, it actually cuts the geometry based on wherever the closest units you are approach to the world grid. And that's because the source engine actually tries to optimize that, and so they try to cut off the geometry that you're not going to be able to see. Whereas in Skybox, you can actually see those lines right there. This is the indicator where that is the part that's being sliced and drawn inside here versus to the Skybox. So let's go back and let's do this guy. Alright, so now we're back in Hammer. So we're going to apply the technique again, except we're going to be doing this guy instead. So let's cut these guys. Right there. Let me do individual cut for this one. Oops. There we go. I have to make sure it's converting to world brush because I want to be able to select a certain object. And finally, our little guy right here will be cut. Now we have. Oops, forgot to. Now we have a section of these geometry that's not outside, but they will be drawn in the skybox. So now I can group them together and then create another hint texture. Oops. So I want to make sure it's aligned to the origin. Actually, this isn't in line, so we brought that down. And this guy up. Oops. I hate when Harry does that. Alright, now I can group those together. And then we can actually move to Skybox. You can also figure out, this is the origin, so we have to have some space right here down by 1. And it seems like it's aligned to the origin, so we can do that. You want to make sure you figure out how to map it. Of course, we're putting in the scale of 1/16 into a fraction. Let's see, we're downsizing the grid to 32 units, and it seems like it's perfectly aligned to the center. Now we have to make sure it's inside the skybox. Like so. Now we can actually run the map again and see it in hammered. That's fine. Alright, so the game loads up and now we can see our geometry has perfectly aligned to the original geometry. Likewise for this geometry here. And that's the beauty of using the skybox placement for your game or your level, because now you can actually trick the player thinking that you can actually go beyond that, but you know that the player will never be able to reach the skybox unless they cheated, which using like no clip. So we can actually see our boundary. So I'm going to turn on the wireframe mode. So that way you can actually see our geometry. It's actually aligned to that skybox perfectly. So now you can actually make your level and make player feel like they're inside a CD of some sort, rather than being inside a very small tunnel or narrow blocked space. And that'll be the end of today's tutorial. Oh, and there is another thing I want to show you. Let me go back to Hammer. If you are adding a custom models or prop that actually intersect with the skybox, then you can do two things. Is that I'm gonna use prosthetic for this time. I'm gonna say scout model. Let's see, there you are. So actually, let's make that a little bit bigger. Let's see, we can do rocks. So some of these rocks has two set of them where, like for example right here, this rock looks perfectly scaled in real world, but there's another model that looks the same, but it's scaled really smaller. And that's because some of these props are actually meant to be in the skybox, whereas this one meant to be inside the game world. So if you have a problem like this, where some of the object intersect with the skybox, then you can actually use two different methods. One is that you can have the prop near the skybox, but you can actually have it outside, but you have to make sure that your origin of the prop must be inside your map. Now, if I go to the skybox, and where are you? There you are. And say if the rock needs to be right there. But you suddenly realize that it's way too big and that it needs to be scaled. The problem is you can't scale the props correctly inside Hammer, so we have to use the one that's provided for us, and that's the Skybox version, which actually scaled down for you to use the Skybox. Now where is that guy? What? Put you right there, at least. I'm going to try to offset because I know for certain that my rock is going to appear right there in the game. But I am going to lower it just in case. Alright, now we can actually run the map and see that there's pro and cons to doing this. Alright, so now we're in the game and there we go. We have our two prop. One is actually inside the game and the other one is actually in the skybox. So now, the only problem is that if you have a rock that's inside the skybox interact through the level, they will be clipped through as if they were passing through the geometry, because the skybox is actually rendering based on where you're looking at, and it does not calculate the collision. So that's one thing that you have to make sure to keep your geometry as far away from the skybox. As you can see, it looks like that. Of course, I'm in no clip mode because I can go through the geometry, but that's one of the cases where you have to determine which option is the best suitable for the level. So we have the prop here that's actually the full scale, and then we have a prop here which is the 16th scale, and it looked pretty identical. So that's today's lesson. I hope you learned something from this tutorial, and thank you. Have a good day.